Hi. So I spoke to a staff member, I think it was yesterday, who brought up using some kind of video demonstration stuff, like not necessarily full-on tutorials, but showcases and small tips and tricks about rotations for the different combat styles for the DPS Gem Tag challenge. Well, not challenge, but requirements channel. And I was kind of tasked to dig out some of my previous videos that I've done on this topic, but decided that given some mild tweaks and a little bit of gear changes and everything in the last couple of months, I thought I'd just do a talk over, kind of. This is not going to be a pre-edited, annoying fucking 9-hour project or anything. It's going to be me doing a couple of gems on various tiers of difficulty. I am going to be explaining what I'm doing and why. Go through some of the basic details about meleeing, like double autos with the freedom ability and then when to cancel what, why. Maybe some variations in berserk rotations for different situations, sort of depending on, and then whatever I can think of that is relevant both for the gem purpose and also for random PVM situations. So the first thing is that when you're doing these gems, you are allowed to use the Wars Retreat dummies so long as you stick to one of these three. You can dispense one at a time. The reason for that is because if you stand over here with the scythe, for example, and you hurricane, you would hit that one and that one at the same time, and it would distort your score towards something higher, just because of the AoE effect. As usual, everything in RuneScape that is sort of, I don't know what you call it, that doesn't really move around, it's stationary, is facing south. Why? I don't know, but it does. So when you want to use a flanking switch for any of these dummies, you want to stand on the north side. If you are using that one for some reason for practice or whatever, that would be this square over there. If you're using one of these, it would be one of these adjacent ones on the north side. So starting off, this is one of the things that people ask a lot of questions about. This doesn't really matter. Select a combat style, pick whatever the weakness of the style that you're using. I'm meleeing, so I will pick a ranged dummy. Weakness doesn't matter, and then weaker than me, same as me, whichever, also doesn't really matter. It has to do with debuffs and other stuff that we don't really take into consideration for this. But gear loadouts, I'm using Trin Masterwork, Essence of Finality. My special weapon choice is Dragon Claw. This is up for debate whether or not it's optimal. I tend to only use it for relentless procs to dump adrenaline, but there's also other ways to do that doesn't use the Dragon Claws, so do whichever one you want. Options that you have are Dragon Dagger, Dragon Halberd, Dragon Longsword to some extent, albeit that one is extremely niche. Granite Maul, also pretty niche, and then Dragon Claws. Claws is the one that I favor mostly because I think it's just the most fun. Damage multipliers for the different ones is Dragon Dagger clocking in at 320% for 25% adrenaline cost. It hits twice. Useful to take into consideration when dealing with the damage cap. The Dragon Halberd hits 370%, which is very high. Also hits twice, but it does share cooldown with Cleave, so it requires you to take that into consideration for rotation, which can be annoying and cumbersome if you're just kind of winging it. Also consumes 25%. Then you have the Dragon Longsword, that is just one massive hit. That way you got something that you can use preferably outside of your berserk rotations, otherwise it's just going to cap and be a waste of time. I think it's 360%, it's also 25% adrenaline, so these three are very similar. None of them are really a big jump over using anything else like a good threshold ability or just keep rotating as usual. They're very niche use cases. Dragon Claws deals 380% damage spread across 4 hits instead of 2. That way the reason why I like that is because it's going to bypass the damage cap if you're boosting a ton of damage at the same target. So you're not going to just cap out to 15Ks like you would in any of the other high-hitting ones. But it also uses 50% Dren, so it's extremely cumbersome. You don't really use it mid-rotation unless you get a Relentless proc, or if you know for a fact that after that short burst of damage, your adrenaline is not going to be important for the rest of the fight, or for foreseeable time anyway. I have a Elder Overload salve. You can use whichever overload you want or have. I pretty much only use these, that's why I took one of those. It is overkill for this purpose. I also have an Adrenaline Renewal Flask. My Kopeshes, my CGS, my Spear, and my Scythe, which is a flank switch. This, for most people, is probably going to be a Drygore. For all intents and purposes, whatever I'm saying now applies to you as well. This is just a personal preference thing that really doesn't make a huge difference in the end. Ring of Vigor, Asylum Surgeon ring. Asylum Surgeon just because this is a risk-free environment and the adrenaline procs kind of the only thing that ring-wise I think is useful enough to care about. You could use it Ring of Death if you really want to have that higher damage multiplier during. I'm not going to juggle 3 rings because I just can't be asked, but yeah. No pocket slot, no aura, no, there's nothing that can go in here that does anything for you really. So, first up, I've made a nice senior-friendly interface here so that everyone can see what I'm doing. First thing I'm going to do is do a 5-minute gem according to some of the most basic rules. I'm going to ignore the greater ability upgrades. I am not going to use my Limitless Sigil, and just in general not going to do anything really fancy. Because I have upgraded Greater Fury and Flurry, I will be using those. I can't downgrade them, which would be really annoying for the purpose of this video. But this will be geared towards your entry-level melee, maybe doesn't have all the interesting gear switches, the expensive perks, whatever, who just wants to get the entry-level clan tag for full membership. Rules, as you probably know if you're watching this, is 100% adrenaline start, and then Soul Split stays on to keep your life points as high as possible at all times, so you're not juicing Derek's Relic for this. So, as soon as the gem starts, Berserk, Adren Potion, keep rotating your hardest hitting basics, then as soon as you can, use your Assault. After the third hit of the Assault, use your Destroy. When Destroy has 1 second left, press A basic, and then use whatever else you want. This would be your Flurry, or Quake, or yeah, anything really. Since you're not CGSing in between, Adrenaline doesn't make a ton of difference for you. So, when the circuit's up, finish with a Blood Tendril, repeat your bleeds as often as you can out of the Berserk rotations, save for Slaughter, don't use that one. Then do another set of Assault and Destroy. Keep an eye on your Berserk timer, make sure that you're 100% adrenaline by the time that goes back. And then Circ again. Assault, first priority always. And then Destroy. You could Hurricane there if you want to as well. Because it was a naked Circ with no Sigil, no Natural Instinct, and no Adren Potion, then Hurricane would have been able to fit both its hits. Honestly, at this level, I wouldn't worry about it. So your Blood Tendrils, you Dismember. That second set of Thresholds. Taking it very easy here. Circ again, Adren Pot again. Blood Tendrils Dismember. Your second threshold set. Because my assault cooldown, I'm going to leave that one alone. Should always be higher priority to use the assault in your berserk than use it outside if you have to pick between the two. Ideally you don't. The berserk. And this time I'm going to do the assault hurricane variant. Let's look at the time remaining on my berserk here. It's going to fit nicely in at the end. Blood Tendrils and Dismember again. Keep rotating your basic abilities. Wait for the cooldowns to leave your thresholds available so you can do your second assault. And then your second destroy. Assault has a longer cooldown than destroy, so if you have to pick between the two, try to use assault first. That way it will be available quicker. Time to circ again. Wait for the adrenaline potion to be ready. Don't circ before it is. Assault. Destroy on the third hit. One basic when destroy has 1 second left. Flurry. Cancel it immediately. And circus up. Dismember. Blood Tendrils. And because it's only 30 seconds left and I won't be getting another circ, I am going to Adren Dump. So anything goes, really. Assault, Destroy, Quake, Flurry, yeah, carrying on doing basics. So that was the entry level of essentially everything. Score in that case was 950k, which with good margin passes the 850k clan full membership requirement. Okay, so for the next tier I'm gonna start using some more of the upgrades. I will be using my perk switches. That would be my lunge 4 on the spear. This could also apply somewhat to a lunge 4 on the other item if you don't have a spear yet. And my flank switch, I will also be using the upgraded abilities from ED2, which would be primarily Greater Barge, because that's the one that really changes how you deal with stuff. And I will also be using my Limitless Sigil. So if you lack one of these, then sort of take that into consideration when comparing to what I'm doing now. I will go through some ways around some of these, specifically the Limitless Sigil. And yeah. This will be a mid-tier, aiming towards someone who wants to pass the 200k DPM or 1 million gem. My flank is going to be used twice every minute. It will be used 2 times in every berserk and once outside. I will also be using the threshold flanking or deep flanking once outside the circ rotations in the 40 seconds without boost. And the spear is pretty much the same thing as it was before, just with a slightly higher emphasis on using Dismember. So step off your target, do 1 passive ability, Berserk, Barge, Flank. Now, because of that exclamation mark, you bleed your assault, you go into your destroy. When your destroy has 1 second left on it, do a flurry, cancel it with any high hitting basic, and then finish with a flank at the end. Then you put your lunging switch on, or the spear in this case, you do your blood tendrils and 1 dismember. And then you carry on with the second set of thresholds. At this point, you do both your flanks. and then another dismember with your launching switch. Now you keep an eye on your Berserk timer. Step off, anticipate, Berserk, barge, flank, 2 basics, well 1 basic, flank and 1 other. Then bleed 1 threshold, do 1 basic, start, 2nd threshold, cancel it with the 3rd one. So that order takes time. The reason for that is you want to get all of them in the limitless 6-second time window. Dismember Blood Tendril after your Berserk is up. Some random threshers, according to whichever ones have the highest damage multiplier. Because of delayed assaults, I'm not going to use it this time. And then when your Berserk is getting ready, look at your Adrenaline Potion. 4 seconds. Off, anticipate, Berserk, pot, barge. Flank, bleed assault, go into destroy, flurry, cancel it, carry on with the basics, and finish with the flank. Blood Tendril, dismember. Threshold set. Flanks. Keep an eye on your Berserk timer. Step off. Anticipate. Berserk. Barge. Flank. 1 more basic. Limitless. Bleed 1. 1 basic. Start the 2nd. Cancel with the 3rd. And then finish with another flank. Blood Tendril and Dismember with your launching switch or spear. Obviously Blood Tendril does not apply if you're using a launch switch, but you still want to use it at that point. Threshold set. Flanks. Start worrying about your Berserk timer and your Adrenaline pot cooldown. The Adrenaline pot cooldown governs whether or not I want to use that Berserk once it becomes available, because I don't want to Berserk without the potion. So that's why Berserk is available and I'm still waiting. Off, anticipate, Adrenaline potion, barge, flank, bleed 1. Destroy, or whichever 2nd one you want. Cancel the destroy at 1 second left. Flurry. Cancel it instantly. Finish with a flank. Blood Tendril. Dismember. And then this being the final stretch, just dump whatever adrenaline you have with the highest hitting abilities that are available to you. So that would be your flanks. My assault, and just for the hell of it, I'm gonna EOF Claw here at the end. So that was 1,078,000, passing the 1 million mark with a pretty good margin without noting too much into details, just repeating a couple of guideline basics. Before I go into the next one, I'm gonna go through the cancelling briefly and some details about abilities. I'm not going to explain how Greater Barge works, because I think everyone who watches this probably either knows or has it already, and if you don't have it, then it doesn't really matter if you know how it works or not. Know this, buy it, first chance you get, under any circumstance, it's amazing. But yeah, Assault, Channel ability, mostly bled, but sometimes cast normally. When cast normally, you want to cancel it with a basic or another ability. So 1, 2, 3, cancel. That will stack the first hit of your next ability with the last hit of the Assault and save you, I think it's a third of a global cooldown or a tick. Could be 2, not sure, doesn't matter at this point. Then your Destroy. You'll be looking at the timer in the buff bar over here. So 1, 2, 3, 1 second. 4th hit and the stack. There we go. And your Flurry. The Flurry is kind of different in the sense that it's used differently for utility and for damage. For damage, you want to cancel it pretty much straight away, so you let it play 1 global cooldown as you have to, otherwise you can't use another ability. And then you just carry on, so you start the Flurry, and then you go directly for something else. That way it hits twice, and you deal your next basic on top of the original hit, giving Flurry 2 times 157%. Otherwise, if you're using the Berserk Reset effect that Greater Flurry has, that shortens the cooldown for your Berserk to be ready for the next time you can use it, this is situationally specific for a lot of PVM, then you just play out the Flurry all the way, let it do its 4 hits, and you stack on the last one instead. Very similar to Destroy. 2 Berserk rotations that matter. The one that I just did. Barge, Flank, Bleed Assault, Destroy. High hitting basics. Flurry, Cancel, and final Flank. That would be your standard Berserk rotation when you have flanking available, otherwise you replace the flanks with just 188% basics. Secondly, some situations you want to do a Berserk rotation where you still mind your Flurry hits and reset the Berserk timer. When doing that, it could look something like this whenever Berserk is ready again. So Berserk, pop, barge, flank, bleed 1, hurricane instead of destroy, and then flurry, and let it go to the 4th hit. That was not supposed to happen. Okay, take 2. So, that would be Berserk, pop, barge, flank, bleed your assault, do a hurricane instead of a destroy, and then let your flurry play out all 4 hits. A couple of places this is used is Elite Dungeons, when you have a fast pace group run, the Blight Core at Solak, sometimes during Solak P2, but that is slightly different because you tend to bleed the flurries instead. So what you could do there, if you want to get the benefit of all 4 flurry hits, but you want to cycle your abilities differently for some reason, this is part personal preference and part whether or not you have flanking available so that your timings are revolving around that or not. But what you could do as well would be to Berserk, pop, barge, flank, bleed the flurry, then carry on upwards with your assault. Cancel that assault with the destroy. And at the end there you could stack that last flank in. So those 3 are some kind of run-of-the-mill Berserk rotations. There's other variants to this that are like tailored for more niche circumstances. But these three are pretty much the ones that you want to care about. And yeah. Oh, right. One thing that people talk about often, just because Couchy does it, and some other people followed it because of that, is being able to use your freedom ability as DPS. So during the cast of a passive ability like freedom, you carry on doing auto attacks, and if you switch your weapons at the right time during that, you're gonna end up doing one offhand auto attack and one two-handed auto attack in one global cooldown. This gives you a slightly higher damage multiplier than the 157% basics that you otherwise revert to when you're out of 188s. And that would look like this. So freedom, and then when you freedom, you put your two-handed on like halfway through the global cooldown. Those were perks. That ruined everything. Right. Again. So freedom, and then about halfway through the global cooldown, you put your two-handed weapon on. That will cause you to auto-attack twice. Freedom, two-handed. That is one of the most meaningless details that I could probably teach you guys if you're watching a video like this. Some people use these tricks for very niche situations. Some people use them to build adrenaline faster during a preloading stack of Meteor Strike and Dragon Battle Axe and Natural Instinct before going into a boss fight. Generally, I would say, don't worry about it. Use your freedom for what freedom is actually for, because in some cases it does matter. And it's going to matter a hell of a lot more than those extra, whatever it is, like 10% damage that you get on that one ability. Yeah, so the third tier gem then, at this point I will be using essentially everything I have. I'm going to be using the CGS, my perk switches, my limitless, my greater abilities, and yeah. So before I start the next one, I'm going to go through two different variants of how to deal with your CGS, because that's the addition now that will change the most rotation-wise. The CGS spec can be done in one of two ways. They have slightly different utilities. It's also kind of a personal preference thing. One of which, probably the entry-level one, the one that most people are gonna learn first, apart from obviously just casting the spec, is using a dual-wield ability before your CGS spec. That way you get a free auto attack with a two-handed weapon during the animation of the CGS spec plant. So Decimate, CGS, spec, that was a 3.2k auto for nothing. That's one of them. And the other one consists of you doing basically the same thing you do for your berserks when you are using Greater Barge. You step off the target, do one passive, you spam click the ground, plant the CGS, and then you barge. That way you can bleed one ability. This is useful to bleed flurries in some situations where you want to have two flurries within one Zerg cycle to be able to reset the Zerg as quick as possible. Typical use case for that would be AOD and Solak. And that would be the one out of the two that I favor and the one that I'm going to use in the following gem, where I'm using all of these things at the same time. So now for gem number 3, where I'm going to be using all these things fit together at the same time. The melee requirement for the extreme tag is 1200k. Since this is a display case and I will be talking over what I'm doing and focusing on a lot of other stuff rather than just doing what I'm supposed to do here, it will probably be a little bit wonky time-wise, and I'd be surprised if I nail everything without making any mistakes. I will say this for a general guideline of doing this gem myself a bunch of times, that you're not going to nail it every single time. It's called extreme for a reason. It's also supposed to be somewhat difficult. If you are consistently doing in the neighborhood of like 1150, I would say that you are probably within RNG bounds of getting a 1200, but the closer you crawl to the 1200 line on average, obviously the tighter your rotation is. At this point, you're not really allowed to make any mistakes. One mistake that I made is starting the gem while talking about this, as you just noticed by the 15-second timer. So that's kind of annoying, but it's whatever. I have another gem. I'm just going to lobby and get rid of this one. So circ rotation, barge, flank, bleed, cast the other, cancel it as you would, carry on with the basics, and then finish with another flank. Throw your spear on under your blood tendril and a dismember, go off target, anticipate, click the ground, barge your CGS, bleed one of your thresholds, cast the other one, flank once with the basic flank, thresh flank if you are just shitting adren, but mostly not. Mind your berserk timer, look at your assault timer to know that once you circ you will have assault available. 10 seconds is enough. Off, anticipate, circ, barge, flank, the usual shit, one more basic, bleed your destroy. Yeah. If you've gone this far in the video, I think most of the stuff that I'm saying now is pretty much just standard for you. I'm gonna say some of it anyway. So off again, plant that, get a Relentless proc, because why not? Do both the flanks because of that extra adren. Now watch my Adrenaline Potion cooldown rather than my Berserk cooldown, because I don't want to Circ without the A-pot. That would be a stupid mistake and ruin the rotation completely. Now off. So circ on the minute mark every time. It's desirable. Bleed one, cast the other, cancel it appropriately, cast the third. Now because of that delayed assault cast, I'm not going to use the assault in my following CGS rotation. So I don't want it to be on cooldown for the next circ. So it's a bit of planning. Don't step off too early like I did there, obviously. Yeah, barge. Just camp all the good things. Throw in my thresh flank instead of the assault there, just to save up for the next one, because I made a mistake. Another cheeky tendril. Not tendril, dismember, sorry. So barge, flank, one more basic. Lead my assault, do one basic. Start the second, cancel it with the third. Cancel the third appropriately. And finish with the flank. Starting to see a pattern there. It's pretty much the same shit, just clockwork over and over with very small variances in which order you do the thresholds depending on availability and utility. So do your bleeds, get off, do the CGS, bleed one threshold, flank once. I go on a Adren proc, so I'm gonna flank twice. The other threshold. And now, look at that. It's time to circ again. And I have lagged a couple of seconds behind, which is fine. Barge, flank. Probably pot when you have yours available. Don't do what I just did. See how much of that we can salvage. That was really dumb. Both my bleeds, looking at my CGS, almost ready. Then off. Planting. Luckily that was the last Adren potion. So cooldown throw off is not going to be a thing. And now because this is the final CGS, my Adren doesn't matter from this point, so I'm just going to use Threshers. And dump all my Adren. And that was 1.2 million and 18,000, so I passed the extreme DPS requirement for melee. Yeah, I mean, I've been sitting here recording for an hour, just trying to get usable showcases of all these different things. I hope this taught you something. I don't really know what to say. I mean, if you stuck with me this long, then, you know, fucking cheers, I guess. But yeah, good luck with this. And if you want any help with it or have any questions or whatever, either write to one of the people who currently have the extreme melee DPS tag, or write to me personally, and I'll try to answer your questions as much as I can.